Welcome to Soulful 7 Conversations. This is the first one of 2020, and we are on location in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is a very important part of my life and my family's life. We've been coming here for over 25 years. And today my guest, she's just a love person for me, is Amar. We met, I would imagine it's been 15 years. I think. And I would say she has been a mentor, a really dear friend. It's interesting because I think God has put Adi in my life for really important reasons. She has kind of come into my life when I've been at places of struggle, when I'm trying to make decisions, when I've been going through something really hard, whether it's with family or work or even spiritually, and for whatever reason, our paths will cross at that right moment. And she has spoken truth to me and set me on the right path. And so she's just a really important person for me, for my spiritual life. And so she is a yoga instructor here in Jackson Hole. And she is the one that started me in doing yoga, and I've been practicing for 20 something years. I consider myself still a beginner, but it's a part of my spiritual discipline, and so I thought it was really great that y'all would get a little piece of what I get from her, wisdom and love, and she is a true seeker for what I would call as a soulful life. She is a very deeply soulful person with a very big heart and is full of lots of wisdom. So Adi, welcome.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'm so glad you're here. And I'm just going to start, this is a spiritual conversation. And so let's talk about the divine and how you know the divine, experience the divine in your life. What does that look like for you?
Well, I just want to begin with there's so much that I don't know.
Okay.
Most of this experience of life, this creation of life is unknown. But one thing that I feel on a very visceral and sensational level is that there is something bigger than myself. There is something that has created this entire experience. Every living thing, every living being, every part of this creation, from our planet to all of the planets to the universe and beyond. There's something larger than us that is orchestrating this entire creation, and that is existing within me and within everything and everyone. And so I, again, don't know a lot, and I am a seeker. Mm-hmm. I'm a seeker to know something, and that something is primarily to get to know this one, who I am. And I believe that the more I get to know this existence, that the more I get to know the entire creation and all of existence. So I think there is a presence that is beyond us, but within us. And it's pulsing within us.
Right. And I think that's one thing that you have taught me over the years is this, really trying to understand what is going on inside of you, who the spirit, or if you want to call it soul or self, or getting to know who that person is and where you are in time and space, in relation to the rest of the world around you. And for me, I guess it's by knowing who I am and what my capacity is, that then allows me to know who God is, or creation. Is that what you've been teaching me?
Yeah. Well, our entire experience of life is happening inside of ourselves.
Right.
So the way that we interpret what's happening outside is really an experience that's happening within us. And so we can believe that life is happening to us, but really life is happening for us. And the way that we choose to perceive what is happening outside of us, that is our experience of life. So what we think and what we feel is our reality of this existence. And the more we can be present with what we think and what we feel and what's happening within us, the more we can actually have some control or take charge of what our experience of life will be. And I do believe that the more we get to know this and the more we take charge of this one, the more we can influence our reality and influence our destiny. I don't necessarily believe that destiny is fixed. I think that we have to do the right things in life for the right things to happen. And they may not always happen the way that you want them to be or the way that you want them to happen, but within yourself, getting to know yourself, you can happen the way you want to be.
Right. It's interesting because I'm taking a theology class right now at Vanderbilt, and it's on Thomas Aquinas, who was a medieval theologian. But that's one of the things is the Creator, the divine God, has given us the agency of free will. So the idea that we can make our choices and we can kind of make this path for ourselves or this experience here on earth. And what the Creator is hoping and has given us the capacity to do is to choose love, to choose peace, to choose mercy, and that's the path. Unfortunately, and I speak from personal experience, whatever life circumstances are, the uncertainty, the unpredictability, the struggle, we can become these little spinning tops and we lose the grounding of our being. And that's when we struggle. And we, all of a sudden the path has all these roadblocks instead of it being an open path in front of us, which you've tried to help me with. Many times I've come to the mat in your classroom, like that feeling of just feeling tight and not sure which way to go and feeling just tangled on the inside and trying to figure out, how to more gracefully make my way.
Yeah, and I think identifying the blockages that we are creating within ourselves, it's simple to believe that it's life that's creating blockages. But really, again, it's our interpretation of what's happening that's creating a blockage. And most of our experience, when you talk about being a spinning top, we get trapped in that and we suffer that because we're really just reliving what has happened to us in the past or the way that we've thought about things
and
from our past.
Right.
And so, I've been doing a lot of work around neuroscience lately. It's been very fascinating to me lately because yoga is a science and it's an art, but the way that our brain functions, the way that our consciousness functions, there's been many studies out there recently over the last 10 to 15 years about the nature of our consciousness. And 95% of our thoughts are repeating. And we have 70,000 thoughts a day. So 95% of those repeating thoughts are old.
Right.
They're the thoughts that we had yesterday and the day before. We can relive an experience from 10 years ago as if it's happening to us today because our physiology doesn't know the difference. If we think about things the way that they happened 10 years ago and we start to produce a certain chemistry within ourselves today based on some event that happened 10 years ago, our entire physiology will experience that as if it's happening to us today. So 95% of what's happening within the field of our mind is being repeated. And of those 95%, of repeated compulsive thoughts, about 75% of them are negative.
I know.
Because the mind
that
has
holds
a
on
bias.
to the negative. It does.
It does. It has a bias towards negativity. But the more we become aware of this patterning within ourselves, the more we take responsibility for, this is me cooking up this nonsense or reliving this experience that doesn't exist anymore. It's dead. It's in the past. The only thing that exists is now. And so when we're living through the thoughts of our past, we're really living in a non-existential state. We're not living here and now.
Yeah, we need to be in the now. Because I think we're like creatures of potentiality, which means
predictability.
But we can there's always the potential for, which is how God created us, the potential for making new choices.
Always.
New destinies.
Every moment.
New relationships, new experiences of God and one another, God in one another. But for whatever reason, it's like we get pulled by the collar in the back and we get jerked back. And then we just repeat the same stories. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the power of choice in every single moment.
Okay, so how would you tell us then? Like, how can we rewire ourselves?
Well, again, I've been studying quite a bit about neuroscience and the process of rewiring the brain. It's known now that there is plasticity to our brain, that we are not hardwired to be any particular way, that our genetics are not going to determine our reality and our health, that actually we can be above our genetics. And that means that we have to take charge of our minds. But part of taking charge of the faculties of our minds and our bodies is learning new things. So experiencing new things, putting yourself in the unfamiliar, being deeply interested in the uncertainty. We get comfortable with the predictability of who we are. That's safe for a lot of people. But that safety builds these walls of protection and
there's
armor.
no movement. We don't move anywhere.
No.
And I really do believe God is asking us to change and evolve and grow.
Absolutely. And the way we evolve is through letting energy move. Energy, emotion is energy in motion. Energy has to move. If it stagnates, that becomes a precursor to disease or dis-ease, which is a distance from ease. So we have to challenge ourselves. We have to put ourselves in environments that are unfamiliar. We have to explore relationships that are new within ourselves and around us. And, one way that I do this is through meditation, because every time my eyes close, I'm stepping into the vast mystery and the boundlessness of the unknown. And that experience allows me to see, because we don't just close our eyes. A lot of people, there are some people that can close their eyes and immediately the world has stopped. Most people close their eyes, and especially in the beginning of a meditation practice, and your mind gets louder. But in that loudness, you're revealing to yourself what is really compulsively going on within you that has been left unaddressed.
So it's a way of studying yourself.
It's a way of looking at yourself,
right,
and being really deeply honest with what has not been addressed, what have you not resolved, seeing what you're obsessing about. And in that process of watching, you can start to take responsibility for what's happening. And slowly over time, the mind starts to settle and the compulsions start to slow down. And then in that stillness, there's in that pause between our thoughts, when there's nothing going on, when there is stillness, there's freedom, there's peace, there's bliss, there's harmony. And this is how we can start to fire and rewire new connections within us, is now we get to produce the thoughts and the emotions that we want to experience this life through, rather than the mind becoming the master over us. We become the master over the mind, and the mind starts to serve us rather than the other way around. And so it's a process, and it takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes discipline, and it takes diligence. It's not something that
I have to confess. I mean, I'm very unsuccessful with that. I mean, I'm, I will commit to meditating, and then within like 3 minutes, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta.
I
go
have to do
this.
something.
Yes,
And
or
that-
I'll be like, well, that was wonderful. So at that 3 minutes, and now I know exactly what the next 10 things are that I need to go do.
So that
Which is not good. That defeats the purpose.
When you stay, when that happens, because your mind and body is going to kick and scream and tell you to get out. Your mind and body is going to tell you all of these other things that you need to do and take care of. But if you ignore it and you stay, even if everything's going wild, your senses are like wild horses, and you have to take the reins into your own hands and start controlling those senses. And so when you have the impulse to go, to leave, that's when you stay.
That's when you sit.
And you keep yourself there. And something starts to slowly happen. And even if it doesn't happen for a long time, you still stay. Because in staying, now you're experiencing something different. Now you're experiencing something new. And that's when we start to fire and rewire new connections, where eventually, you can't meditate for a week and think, well, my mind is still going crazy. This doesn't work for me. It doesn't work that way. Practice requires an earnest sincerity and devotion for a long period of time.
So what does that look like for you, like daily? I mean, because would you say meditation is what we're doing when we're going through the poses in yoga, or is this something separate where we're actually sitting still, as you would imagine monks sitting there still?
So most people need to start with movement, because they're agitated. They need to move that energy. So for many, many years, my practice was very movement based, but it was like a moving meditation. There was a complete union between mind, body, breath, and it was very meditative for me, even though I was moving. Now my practice has moved towards being more of a seated, still practice, which has been very different for me. And there are definitely days I sit. Every morning I wake up, that's the first thing that I do. I don't go and turn on the pot of coffee or the pot of tea.
You do
sit.
Okay.
And
even with your children, I mean, so you set time before.
Bless my husband's heart. He has completely supported me on this path. And if it wasn't for him, it would be more challenging. One, I wake up very early.
What's early to you?
Well, in an ideal world,
do tell.
When I'm doing all of the right things, early is between 4:30 and 5, when everything is aligned within me.
Okay.
If I'm not completely aligned, I need more sleep when I'm not really taking care of myself. So then I wake up around 6. Okay. But my husband takes care of our son in the morning, so I can meditate, so I can do my practices, which I know I'm very fortunate in that regard. And I know that not everybody has that.
Yeah.
That
I mean, what would you
experience.
tell someone then? Just find us another space during the day.
Yeah. One thing that is important is that you find a time, a regular time every single day. So it might not be the morning for you. Early in the morning, everything is the most quiet. Right. So it's a very conducive and supportive time for this internal work, because the world is quiet. No one has awakened yet. Your mind is also quieter at that time, because you're not up against the clock. Right. That I have to get my kids to school and I have to do all of these things before I go to work. So if you make the time early in the morning for yourself, it really is a blessing. I mean, it's a beautiful time. But if that time doesn't work, I tell people, pick a time before lunch, before you eat. It's best to be empty. So one quote that we have that I've integrated into the yoga studio with our trainees that are really getting on this path of meditation and breath work is, no sadhana, no food. So if you have not yet done your practices, then you don't eat.
Okay.
And you don't eat
You have to
until
work.
you do your, you
got to work to get your reward.
To get your food.
I like that though.
So,
That's
and that has been very helpful for me because I'm reminded, if I'm hungry and I haven't done the practices, then I'm reminded, okay, it's time. It's time to sit. So,
you spoke about doing the internal work. And so you've talked about that over the last 20 years, Farrell. You have to do the internal work. What does that exactly mean to you?
The internal journey?
Yeah.
Well, one, it's an adventure.
See, that's positive.
Yeah. So, we get really excited when we go on a new adventure, right? When you plan a trip to some new place.
Love that. Yes.
You get so excited and you do all this research and you really, you really take care to plan your trip a certain way, but you have no idea what the trip is going to be, right? The excitement is really in the unknown. Right. It's in the mystery of it. So the internal work to me is like that. It's this inner adventure of stepping into the mystery of the unknown and the excitement of what that is. And for me, really what it's been is a journey of seeing myself and my tendencies, seeing my patterns, seeing my knee-jerk reactions, seeing my compulsions, and then asking myself, is this useful? Is this useful for the future that you want to create for yourself? And every time, this internal work, it's like unpacking your bags. There's actually been a metaphor that's been popping up for me lately in my practices that, every day we accumulate things. We're constantly collecting things from things that we see, from things that we hear, from experiences that we have with others. And every time you come to your mat, be it movement through asana or meditation, it's like you're taking out the trash. You're accumulating all this stuff throughout the day, and some of it is beautiful, and some of it is garbage.
It's just not going to serve you.
It's just not going to serve you.
Right.
And so it's like every time you show up for yourself, you're taking out the trash. And if you don't show up for yourself and you're not taking out the trash, after a few days, it starts to stink and it starts to rot. And this is, in my own experience, the times in my life that I've really been in the deepest, darkest places and depressed.
Like off balance.
Totally
off
balance.
And you don't know which way to go.
Yeah, it's like all motivation has been lost because if you think about like your system, if you don't eliminate, if you don't clear, literally if you don't have a movement, and you get stopped up, your whole system becomes sluggish. And when your system becomes sluggish, you become lethargic. And when you become lethargic, it's really difficult to motivate yourself to do anything.
Yeah, and I find that when my spirit is sluggish is when I'm the most uncreative person. Yeah. It's like all of a sudden, I don't feel like I have possibilities. I'm very uncreative, more reactive, which is never a good thing, especially when you're, interacting with other human beings. And I don't know, I just, I do kind of feel stopped in place. So this idea of doing the internal work is so that you get to keep moving forward. That's kind of how, God set this plan in motion. It wasn't ever supposed to stop. It's a constantly creating, artful exercise. And so if I'm stopped in place, then I'm working against what the plan is.
Yeah. And if your mind has accumulated all of this garbage, Okay, if you're cooking up all of this nonsense in your mind, there's no room for creativity because your mind is just in the
It's working it. It's like you're the mouse on the track.
Right.
And I mean, I remember, and you really helped me when I was going through just familial relationships and the struggle that you can have in those. And it really just completely stopped me in place. I mean, I can remember coming to you over and over on the mat, and it was just really, I just kept, how is this happening? Why is this happening? I can't believe this is happening, and going over and over and over again. For me, ultimately, prayer was the way that I had to pray for those people that I was in struggle with, and then pray for myself. And that's what helped me get through the movement. But it is this sense of life is so precious. It's there and then we're gone. And so why would you ever want to stay in the same place when God's like, there is so much that I'm wanting you to see and experience and fall in love with and create. And so why would you allow yourself to, as you say, become sluggish, stopped up, do the work?
Yeah, blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gratitude has been a big practice of mine, especially in those moments of my life where I do feel that I'm backsliding, and we backslide. This is part of the path, is that we take a few steps forward and then we collapse back into our old habits and patterns because they're subconsciously ingrained in us. Most of the way that we behave as adults, we accumulated and inherited that behavior from when we were children. So a lot of the way that we operate is unconscious. Yeah.
Right.
But the moment we become conscious is the moment that we can change. That's the moment that we evolve. If we stay in the patterns of our unconscious or operating from what we've inherited from our pasts, then we're just a victim of the past when we stay stuck in our blocks. But when we become conscious that this life, how can I experience the totality of this life? I cannot experience the totality of this life if I'm just stuck in my head all the time.
Right.
If I'm just stuck in my story all the time. And so when I get stuck, gratitude has been my path. And I find that gratitude, when I just feel the emotion of gratitude, it's like a fast track. It's like I go from being stuck and from being in the compulsions of my mind to just being in the bliss of existence.
Right.
Just being in the joy of existence and in the remembrance of the phenomenon of this life. I mean, the fact that we are here breathing.
I know, and it's snowing.
It's beautiful.
It's snowing. I know.
We miss the beauty. We miss the love when we're just stuck in our repetitive, compulsive tendencies.
So let's just say we're stuck and we genuinely on the inside want to be unstuck. How do you do your gratitude practice? What does that look like? I mean, I know some people will write 3 things on a scratch of paper, that they're grateful for, or, will pray, all the things that they're thankful for. What does that look like for you?
So for me, my guru makes it quite simple. The moment you open your eyes, the fact that you opened your eyes, just smile. Oh. You're alive. Here you are. And, then you check that your loved ones open their eyes as well. And then right there, you're grateful for the fact that the people that you love woke up as well. So that's one practice that
that's just getting down to the raw center of it. Here we are.
I woke up.
Thank God. Yes.
You.
Right.
Thank you that I woke up and that I get to experience this day.
Yeah.
In my meditations, I'll just breathe in the quality of gratitude and I'll breathe out the quality of gratitude. And I really just meditate on that energy and that quality of gratitude. And then before I eat, I say a prayer. And I thank my food, and I thank all of creation that supported that food coming to my plate. So everyone who tended to the land, the wind, the rain, the sun, the soil, whoever prepared my food. And I give thanks to the food that I'm consuming, giving itself to me, sacrificing its life. You know, we're so human-centric that we don't acknowledge that this existence, it's a coexistence.
For sure.
Our existence is dependent on the existence of everything. And if we don't take care for that, if we forget that, we really miss a really beautiful part of life.
Yeah, I mean, all the majillion of threads that are all connected. I mean, we're all like, everything works together.
Yeah.
Like so beautifully and perfectly. Yeah. You're right, we are human-centric.
We are. And so getting out of your own way is a really wonderful way to just remember that this existence is happening because of everything.
Right.
It's not because of you. It's not just you. And I think, when we get stuck or when we collapse into our suffering, our self-induced suffering, we isolate ourselves, and we start to feel alone in this world. We start to feel that this world isn't connected, and the whole process.
And what's the best for us, right?
Right. What is needed for you?
Yeah.
Sometimes things are happening that you may or may not understand because it's what's needed. And if we can just appreciate, and this is another gratitude practice for me in my life, is just, appreciating those challenges, having gratitude for those challenges, because if I accept the invitation that this challenge is creating a space for me to grow and for me to evolve, then I can embrace whatever is happening with joy rather than with misery. I can embrace what's happening and give myself totally to it rather than reject it. And, we're creatures of like and dislike. We're creatures of our preferences. We prefer certain things. We like certain things. And that's all we
definitely
want.
don't want to struggle.
No, we
right? I mean, we do everything in our power not to struggle.
Right.
I really appreciate the concept of welcoming the struggle and the challenges. Yes. However, when you're in it, it's really hard. It's hard. Like one time you told me, Farrell, whatever you resist, persist. Yeah. It's the darn truth, right? Yeah. And it's just, again, it's this internal work of, okay, so this is where we are, and this is the challenge. And if I can just be more open to it as a place of movement to a better place.
That's
right?
your opportunity to evolve.
Yes. So theologically for me, I believe that the Creator is moving all of creation toward ultimate goodness, ultimate redemption, and ultimate love. And so, it's if there are challenges in that, I have to trust the overall plan. And then within that plan, there are going to be challenges, setbacks, dead ends that are still moving me in that direction. I have to be more open to what the challenges are. Yes.
And if we're not paying attention, if you're not paying attention to how you're operating through those challenges, and if you ignore and if you resist, eventually something will happen that will force you to wake up.
Which it could be a medical crisis.
And that's usually what happens for us, is
people.
that we have to come up against the face of crisis before we
okay, this is what I was supposed to do. Yeah, Farrell.
This is what I have to pay attention to. And again, this is why an internal practice and process is so valuable, because it's giving you the time and the space to pay attention, to slow down and to not miss the point. And
well, in the Christian tradition, Jesus kind of set a path of you have to step away from the race. Like you have to physically take yourself out, which is what happens on the mat, which is what happens in meditation, which is what happens in prayer. But again, that is discipline. That is work. I mean, many times I will wake up and I'll think, I'm swirling and I should meditate, I should get on the mat, I should pray, and I will choose to do more instead. I'll be like, you know what? I'm just going to muscle my way through and I'm going to try to do more and I'm going to try to fix this. Where intuitively I know actually by doing less is what would be the best prescription for me.
You're trying to control everything around you to distract yourself from really doing the work.
Control.
Micromanage and
but
control.
we live in a culture that really tells us that we are in control of our destiny in that sense, that we can muscle our way to get where we want to get going or get what we want. And really, that is so false. Like that just really makes us run flat into a wall when we do that.
Well, there was a Zen master on his deathbed. All of his disciples came to him and asked him, what is the secret to your life? How did you live such a joyous and peaceful life? And his answer was so simple. Every morning I wake up, I ask myself, how do I choose to be today? How do I want to be today? And it's, in the realm of the spiritual, things are quite simple, but in the realm of the material, things are more complex. And we have a tendency to complicate the simple. And so there are very simple things that we can do, but we have to be disciplined. And, some people have said to me, Adi, when you say work or when you say discipline, like I just contract and I'm sorry, but it is a discipline. It does require you to show up every single day for yourself, to look at your tendencies, to look at how all of these things that you're doing are just more distractions. They're just more coverings. They're just more layers that are distancing you from the divine, distancing you from self or soul, whatever word you want to give to it, And so if you can recognize that the purpose of our incarnation is to experience the joy of love and this, to be liberated really from the confines of our minds so we can experience the joy of love, the joy of this life
and even the material world. Absolutely. I mean, there is a part of us that is eternal and not material. And so that part of us...
Well, and most of us is actually 99.99% energy and 0.001% matter. So when you're trying to get things done only through particle, only through matter, through doing and controlling everything out here, you're
not using the other 99%.
You're not using the 99.99% that is your electromagnetic field that is connecting you with everything around you, that actually makes the process more seamless and graceful. And it's important to remember, we're not doing what we're doing with an expectation for a specific result, right? Rather, with an acceptance that we will get what is needed.
It's an experience. I think that's the problem, though, is I think that we are so result-driven. And I think that's why even yoga, I can think of myself 20 years ago. And I did yoga, it was more of what can I do, right? Like, can I stand on headstand? Yeah. Can I do this? Of course I can. I will do this. And now I think, yoga is it's a way that I nurture myself and take care of myself. It's a way of slowing myself down, It's a discipline. I'm not there yet on the meditation part of it, but I want to be there on the meditation part. So I want to be gentler in that part of my life too. But that this idea that it's not about results, which I think some people come into yoga or the spiritual life or faith looking for results. And I think what God says is, whoa. It's not results that we're looking for. We're looking for the fullest experience you can possibly have while you're here, right?
Yeah, and being completely present and involved with that experience. Because if you're attached to the outcome, there's a part of you that's stuck in the future, right? You're stuck in your imagination, which doesn't really exist. The only thing that exists is now. So, we've all heard the saying, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And the journey is what it is. It can't be any other way. So if we can begin to consciously enjoy the isness, of what is, then life becomes quite spectacular.
Exactly. It's
and
this
magical.
idea of the discipline of living in anticipation of, and so that means if I'm living in anticipation of, it means even the things that I'm like, oh gosh, I can't believe that's just happened, or I don't really like that direction I'm going, there's something there that you're going to receive, right? Or you're going to experience. And it's, I always talk about this idea of living in hope. It's living in anticipation. It's living in the idea that there's so many opportunities and potentialities out there for us to have a fuller experience if we're open to it.
Yeah, we have to allow, and we have to make ourselves available to that experience of grace.
Dee, you got to talk about grace. Come on, talk about grace.
Yeah, there's in the yogic texts, we talk about practice, okay, which is really effort. It's your effort to be steady and the steadiness of that effort. And it's your ability to apply yourself. So you have to do something, okay? We can't just sit around and do nothing and hope that things will happen, okay? Right. You have to do the right things. But along with practice, there's this element of non-attachment, or really making yourself available to grace and being a receptive vessel to grace, because we can't do this work entirely alone, but we have to do it for ourselves. And so making ourselves available to grace is really this opportunity to do what you're doing, do the work, discipline yourself, be steady in that effort. And being steady in your effort means that you're present with everything that you do. So the moment that you want to collapse back into your old nonsense or patterns, you catch yourself before you collapse. You're literally checking the downward pull.
Right.
But you have to free yourself from the fruits of your actions. And freeing yourself from the fruits of your actions is making yourself available to grace. So now you accept that what is needed is what will be.
Right.
What is needed is what will be. And sometimes what's needed is a little kick in the gut.
Yeah. Or a sore hamstring, or
or an ache in your shoulder. A lot of times when people are practicing poses and they're challenged by the pose, they don't want to do that pose because it's challenging, it hurts, or it's uncomfortable. But there's so much possibility in staying in the center of the fire, in the center of the noise. When everything inside of you is kicking and screaming and telling you it's time to get out, I want to go, I don't want to be in this, that's the critical point. That's when you're on the brink of realization. That's when you're on the brink of some possibility for change and evolution. But if you collapse back into your old, into your comfort, into your preference, before you're even given giving yourself the opportunity to experience something new, well, then you're going to still just be in that 95% of repetitive, compulsive action, thought, and behavior. So
I can remember, I don't know when this was. This is probably like 12 years ago. I don't know. That you like had me all strapped up and stuff and you flipped me upside down. And the entire time I was thinking, there's not one cell of my body that wants to do this. I am a little afraid and I'm very uncomfortable. And you were like, and you're staying here and you're totally staying here. And I had to just like grit it out.
Sit with yourself.
And yeah. But then it's like you say, it's like all of a sudden these doors open. You're like, one, wow, I did it. Right? And two, like a peace rushes over you that, I don't know, it is possible. You know, sometimes
the seemingly impossible is possible.
Yeah, it's like you get into these situations, and I think, you know, fear grabs you by the ankle or leg and will do everything in its power to not let you move forward. And I just think of, I am more of the first child A-type personality, and I do like to feel like I'm in control of lots of things. You know, it makes me feel like I'm more grounded when I feel like I am in control of things. But that gets you into a lot of trouble. One, you are usually disappointed by life because you haven't allowed grace to work if you're trying to control every little thing, right? I don't know, and it definitely robs you of, something new happening in your life. I mean, and that's fear, and that's how nothing good and nothing new and no new experience is going to happen if you stay afraid and fearful.
And what are we afraid of? We're really afraid of change.
Oh, for sure, we're afraid of change.
Of death. And death is really, deaths are happening all the time. Not just physically. Who we were years ago, if we allow to die, can die. The way that we've thought about things can die.
Right.
Perspectives can die. Beliefs can die. Right. Relationships can die. So many
which are
things.
Good.
Yes.
I mean, you can't have a resurrection unless you have the death, right?
And that's change. Or if we fear change, we're just in this extreme clinging to life and life as we know it. So our comforts, our preferences, our likes. And for things to be possible, okay, there's actually a yoga aphorism that says, when you are beyond the pairs of opposites, when you are beyond your likes and your dislikes, your preferences, then the seemingly impossible becomes possible. Because now the door opens. If we stay in just what's comfortable and familiar, there's no room to experience something new.
And that's across life, though. So that's like in your relationships. Absolutely. That's amazing. Your marriages. It's your relationship with your children. It is your spiritual life. However that works out for you, is this potentiality of change, bringing all of this new terrain, right, to be discovered.
New territory, and we get to navigate uncharted terrain, which is really cool. But we're also creatures of habit. So we like to return to familiar terrain, and when we're operating from habit, your body knows how to do things quicker than your mind when you are in habitual pattern, when you're on the autopilot. And so you
can't live on autopilot.
You can't. Well, and we do. I mean, let's face it. You wake up in the morning
where I have not done a gratitude practice, probably haven't said a prayer, and I certainly haven't meditated.
But think about the little things in your life that are habitual, right? The moment you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that you do? You check your phone. Be honest. Do you check your phone?
Cup of coffee.
Or do you go
Nothing
for the
comes
cup of
before
coffee?
that.
Okay, so yours is the cup of coffee.
Nothing.
A lot of people, they check their phone, you know,
Yeah,
then
I do
you
that
go,
second.
you go and
I
you brush your
know.
teeth. Then you go in the shower, you have the same pattern in the shower. You have the same routine in the shower. You first wash your hair with shampoo, then conditioner, then your body, then your face. Then you get out. I mean, we're walking around like zombies, you know, missing life.
Taco Tuesdays.
Right.
Change it.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I know.
So
I know someone there. One of the kids is doing an Alzheimer's unit in their school, and they said the simplest things for doing the neoplasticity is drive a different way to the grocery store, to work, to take your kids to school. Like get off of the same patterns.
Get
and it's
off
the same
of the same
thing
routine.
universally, which is why, Adi, I think that I've so connected with you over the years is because you are a seeker. I mean, you are curious spiritually, is how I would put it. And so much more so than me, you're willing to do the discipline and the hard interior work necessary. And I've watched you do that for 20 years. It's this sense, though, of being spiritually curious that I don't know. Is that something that it's just innate that's in us? I mean, is it, it's, there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about, whatever it is that you think, pray, love, it came from God in the first place, like the divine that is working in you. Can you speak to this lifelong spiritual seeking?
For myself individually?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I was always quite curious as a child. I wasn't raised very religious. I was raised in the Jewish tradition, but we weren't very religious. But I was curious, like I remember many times laying in the back of our station wagon, driving through these tall forests, just looking out and seeing like the sun sparkling down through the leaves and just wondering like what this life is about, like knowing as a really young child, that I wasn't the center of the universe, even though as children we act like we are, but I knew that there was so much to life that I didn't know. And I was very curious about that. I was curious about other families and what their experiences were. I was curious about nature. I was curious about things. And I find myself pretty fortunate that yoga was introduced into my life really young. Mm-hmm. And so I was given these techniques and these tools to navigate the difficult emotions that would arise within me that I really didn't want to experience, mm-hmm. that I resisted. And yoga was really the outlet for me to feel.
Right.
And through yoga, I became more and more curious about, that which is indescribable, that which is unknown, that the mystery of this entire creation. And, I've been curious about all religions. I haven't studied much in the realm of a lot of religions, but I'm very curious about the connection between it all.
Right.
And
I guess that's what I'm getting at, that I feel like even if you're not in that place right now for whatever reason, that you're just not ready to be in that place, I feel like we all intuitively want to know who we are, who God is, how this all works, right? That we're curious about that. And some people, working in ministry, I mean, some people, that portion doesn't happen until they're in hospice. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, they're right there up at that spiritual boundary, and they're like, oh goodness, like I need to, who is God? Who am I? What does my life mean? What is the value of my life? Is there a plan? All of those things, are conjured and feel pretty desperate that you're trying to figure those things out. Whereas, if you can have that working, that curiosity, the asking questions, on the earlier side, which is why I've been drawn to you, because that's your whole life. You're doing that.
Yeah, and I think, what you just said about most people don't become curious until they're on their deathbed.
Mm-hmm. Or they've gotten a diagnosis.
Right.
Or they realize they're not in control. Oh my gosh, I really have absolutely no control.
Right.
Like the only thing that we really have control over is how I am with you in this very moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Am I loving?
But if we remember every day, that we're not guaranteed another day, then naturally we choose to be curious about this day, right? So we're living as if we're immortals, even though we're mortal. And I remember as a teenager, I was a climber and I was invincible. I could do anything. And it really, I had an experience actually on the rock one climb where we got stuck on this rock and we were in between these pillars and the sun had gone down and we didn't have headlamps and we were climbing sandstone and I rappelled down into this dark abyss, not being able to see anything, and our rope got stuck up above. And I was really afraid to pull on the rope because it was sandstone, and I knew that there was a big flake right above me. And, I could easily pull this flake down. And, I remember that being such a pivotal time in my life that I am mortal.
I'm mortal.
And this life is precious. And, many things happened after that. And we got out of this particular area and we ended up on this face and we ended up having to rappel off of this flake that was not at all safe. And the whole time myself and these two other gentlemen that were with me, we had moments of just looking at each other and knowing, I appreciate you and wow, this life has been amazing and this could be it, and the connection that we have, the presence that we have when we remember that we're not guaranteed.
I know, and we just don't do that.
We don't do that.
One, out of fear, but also we're kind of selfish and caught up with I'll be living until I'm, however old.
Yeah, we assume that we're going to live and we're going to grow old and we're going to watch our children have children and we're going to have grandchildren to play with. And we just assume these things, but we're not guaranteed these things. And so that is something that
How do you live from there, though, not being fearful? Because you could easily take the opposite way. You could be like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I have tomorrow and I'm afraid of that.
Right.
Or you could be like, I don't know if I have tomorrow. And so, boy,
what am I going to do with today?
Yeah, how am I going to make this beautiful?
How am I going to be today? How do I want to be today? If this was the last conversation that I had, how do I want this conversation to be? If this was the last moment that I see this one person at the grocery store that I don't think that I have time for, but if it was their last day or if it was my last day, how do I want to be in relationship with this creation, with this world, So I think it is a remembrance, we do. And some people are very natural at, really exemplifying this practice of gratitude and appreciation for life. And when you're around those people, you feel it. It's and their energy is just,
they radiate a glow about them.
Yeah. And you want that energy and you feel elevated and uplifted when you're in the presence of those people, and it's contagious. And so
I want to be one of those people,
for myself,
right? I want to be
for myself. That's
today.
How I want to live.
Right.
I want to live that way.
I want to radiate. I want to give off energy. I guess I shared with you that I just lost a very dear friend much too soon. And so I have been feeling delicate in my stepping. And so easily I could feel afraid, could this be me? Or but also wanting to honor that I am still here and to live as fully as possible. One time you read a poem. Well, you're the one that introduced me to Rumi, who I love and have like so many books, and just think, it's just such spot on for me soulfully, the language that Rumi uses. But it was the guest house. It was like, and the idea is that you're supposed to not be afraid to allow yourself to experience everything across the board. So you open the front door of you and you say, everybody's welcome in. And that could mean just absolute bliss and joy and love and tenderness and beautiful experiences and creativity. But that also could mean heartbreak and disappointment and the sorrow and all of that. And I would say God has created me with the capacity to be able to hold all of that. But that is what's hard being human, right? I struggle with that. I struggle with, the goodness and the difficult in life, and trying to still be grounded and strong and brave, handling all of that. I'll never forget it though. Farrell, you got to let everything in. Be brave and let everything, all the experiences, because they will all serve you, as I think what you said. They're all there for a reason. They knocked on your door for a reason, and you've got to let them all in.
Yeah, and we have a multitude of emotions and thoughts, and it's not a matter of resisting any of them, but rather a matter of recognizing the ones that are useful and the ones that are serving you in being your best selves, versus the ones that are holding you down and holding you back from experiencing the totality of yourself and this life. And so as much as, yes, we embrace it all, we also have the choice to make ourselves the way that we want to be, to think, feel, and act the way that we want to think, feel, and act. And it doesn't mean that when there's a loss in our lives that we don't feel sorrow. It doesn't mean that we're a rock, right? And we don't feel anything.
Right.
We can feel and be sensitive to the totality of everything. But the question is, how long do you feed the thoughts and the emotions that keep you suppressed, that don't allow you to be your best self, that don't allow you to be that radiant, magnificent energy to all of those around you? And so, I've really come to a place in my own life and my own practice where I don't choose those miserable thoughts anymore. And when I am in that pattern of going back into my compulsive state of being negative, or, not looking at life as the cup half full, looking at it half empty, if I collapse into that, I check myself, and I ask myself,
how do you do that, Adi? Like, what do you do in that moment? Like, let's just say you were in that moment. It's a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock and you're just like,
well, the first step is you have to be aware of it.
Okay.
That's the very first step.
So I have to say, oh, Farrell, you have just replayed that same thing.
You have to see it.
Okay.
Because many of us, again, that 95% of our 70,000 thoughts are unconscious. Okay, so we have to first become conscious of that which is unconscious. And we have to accept the invitation in that moment. That's our readiness to take responsibility for what's happening within us. It's not because of someone or something. We can blame that thing and that person and that thing, and
that can be like in a family relationship where all of a sudden that person says something and you're like, I could so easily
feel yourself contract,
react, tight, and then the venom's coming up, and you're gonna or you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just not gonna let that bother me. You are not gonna rain on my parade. I'm sunshine girl. No.
Absolutely,
it's not happening again.
Absolutely not. To give anything or anyone the privilege to disharmonize what's happening within you.
Yeah.
You know, to
But you
set
have to
you
check
off.
yourself.
You have to check yourself.
For
So the
sure.
first step is awareness. You know, we have to be aware of that which we were unaware of. We have to be conscious of that which we were unconscious of. And then once once there's awareness, now I can take responsibility for myself and I own it. I own it. So when I'm pointing my finger outwardly, I make the U-turn and I go back into myself and I own what's happening within me. And I realize that I'm creating the reality based on what I'm thinking and feeling. And then once you own it, once you take responsibility for it, now you can choose. Now you can exercise the power of free will. Now you can exercise the power of choice. So a lot of the time, it requires you to shut up.
Right.
To just pause and to shut your mouth, which is hard for, A-type personalities and, hard for those of us who always have something to say. I mean, I'm definitely that person. But if we can just pause and be with the friction that's happening within us, friction is creating the heat for change.
For change.
Okay.
Right.
So if you immediately just explode and spew it, you've just collapsed. You've lost the opportunity to change. And when we talk about rewiring, if you can do this with yourself 5 times, it's said that if you're in a situation where you normally have a specific reaction to that situation, if you pause and you move from reactivity to conscious response, and you do that 5 times, you will set a new neural pathway. You will set a new groove, a new mode of response. And so the more we do this, again, this requires practice. This is why closing your eyes and learning to just be still and learning to be with yourself and to stay when you want to get out, this is the power of that practice. Because then when you're in the world, okay, and your eyes are open and you're in the hubbub of daily life, now you can pause and have more clarity around what's happening around you and within you and take responsibility for what's happening within you.
Because for people that don't have a yoga practice or a meditation practice, I mean, what you've always said is the discipline that you do on the mat is to serve you and translate when you're actually off the mat, right? Which is the same thing, let's just say Christian practices of, prayer, communion, going to church, serving your neighbor, all of those things. You're doing those things so that it does translate.
Yeah, and you can do all those things and it never translates. You can do all of those things and then you still go back home and you're a total asshole to your loved ones,
It's so true. I know.
When that, measure your evolution by how you are with the people that are closest to you. Yes. That's how we know if the work that we are doing is working. So you can be the person that goes to church every single day and you pray every single day and you're this wonderful person in church, but then you come out and same in the yoga room. You come out and you're just a mess and you're frenetic and you're unbalanced and and then you have to ask yourself, well, am I doing the right things? Am I doing this with the level of presence that is required, with the level of involvement that is required for it really to become a living experience within me in all of my affairs? And so,
well, and that's something that I've been asking myself, recently is it's always, and you can call it checking yourself, but what is the condition of my heart, right? So so I can be doing, a million jillion things, but if the authenticity and the purity and the condition of my heart is not there,
how are you within yourself?
Yeah, then I'm just going through the motions.
Yes.
I don't want to go through the motions. Like, I think that's one of the things that, I'm in a place in my life right now where that just doesn't do anything for me anymore. Like, going through the motions, accomplishing a million jillion things, that just, it's empty. Like, I need something deeper. I need something that feels like it holds meaning, right? good meaning for who I am on the interior and the exterior. Can you speak to spiritual practices that you do that are supremely meaningful to you?
I'd say that, really the simplest thing for all of us is to really become conscious of our breath, because our breath is what's happening
Talk
in the
about
moment.
that, Adi.
The breath is the only thing that is keeping you completely immersed in the moment. So simply turning attention to breath, turning presence to breath, you can start to recognize the relationship between your breath and your mind. Mm-hmm. So when the breath is very erratic, or when the breath is shallow, or when the breath is, hyperventilated or whatnot, there's a specific relationship between the breath and the mind and the thoughts that the mind is producing. So simply turning attention to breath, especially when you're in that angst, you can feel your
like
chest compressing.
Yeah, you just feel like
tangled. You can feel everything knotting up. You can feel yourself contracting. You can feel yourself getting small. And just by turning into your breath and letting your breath expand and letting your breath really be the, connecting the pulse of your breath with the pulse of everything. Because as I'm breathing out, you're breathing in, so my exhalation becomes your inhalation. Your exhalation becomes my inhalation. The trees are in that relationship with us. And so just starting to pay attention to this simple act that is automatic for all of us, but can also be conscious, right? Is really powerful. I mean, anyone can do that, as long as you are here, you're breathing.
Will you give us a specific practice for the breath? I think one time you taught me to think of going upstairs 3 times up in the uptake, I guess, and then
sipping the breath,
and then coming down 3 times. And that's super helpful for me. So this idea in my mind of what breathing in through my nose, but I'm going 1, 2, 3, holding it, and then coming back down 1, 2, 3. Is there another one?
Even simpler than that, because that can not work for everybody. But let's do it. So close your eyes.
Okay.
And just cross your arms and actually turn your palms up on your thighs.
Okay, palms up.
Eyes closed, and sit with an erect spine. And the moment you close your eyes, you turn your awareness inside and just looking deep into the vast space. Turn your presence towards your breath and inhale very smoothly through the rings of your nostrils. Become aware of the space that your breath is occupying. And exhale smoothly out the rings of your nostrils. Become aware of the space that your breath is occupying. And now inhale, follow your breath all the way to its end. And at the end of your breath, gently pause. Be with that pause. Exhale, follow your breath all the way to its end. And at the bottom of your breath, gently pause. Continue like this a few more rounds, watching your breath to its end and pausing. Pay attention to the transition into the next breath. And at the bottom of the next breath, gently pause. And now take your time and slowly open your eyes. That
So
was
good.
Just that.
So that whole just 36 hours of travel with 6 kids, that just washed away. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I feel so, that's what it is. It's this, someone said to me that they're trying to always live from the softness of within. And I love that. Like if I could just live from the softness within, imagine what my interactions would be with everybody, whether it's nature, whether it's, God, you, from the softness of me.
And could you feel in that was maybe a minute.
Yeah, maybe.
That wasn't
It
very
was
long at all. But could you
delicious.
feel how your experience within yourself softened?
Yeah.
The quality, the mind will quickly settle when we pay attention to the breath.
Well, all of a sudden I become gentler, right? And I just become, I don't know, more malleable, softer in that space than the, I'm going to tackle, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to, that just.
You allow things to be.
Right.
You allow the process of life to happen, and you involve yourself in that process. You being a witness of this experience rather than being the actress within the experience all the time.
Oh, say it again. Say it again.
Just being the witness of the experience as opposed, so it's like you're in the movie theater and you're watching the movie. You don't have to be the actress within the movie. You can watch what's happening.
Right.
And when we're watching, this is what the breath does, is it creates some distance. It creates some space between you and your mind, between you and your body, between you and everything that you're cooking up. So now you can watch it rather than being entangled by it.
And then maybe then the divine within me is the one that will respond to the moment.
That's when you become available to grace.
Available to grace. I know.
You have to create that atmosphere within yourself. So if you're entangled and identified with all of your thoughts and everything that you think you know and your conclusions and your beliefs and you're this and you're that, there's no space.
Oh, you've just given me, so this is what I say, Adi, you give me tweaks to my life. You just tweak things, whether it's physically or emotionally or spiritually, and you just tweak something for me. I mean, that just, I don't know, that's, Farrell, make yourself available for grace. Like if you are so hung up on X, Y, and Z, then there's no way grace has even an entry, not even a window to get into your space. And then look at all the things you've probably missed. I mean, I look back, through the rearview mirror, and I think of places where I've been stuck in my life. And, it's the past, so I'm not going to go back and spend too much time. But it is a good learning exercise to say, gosh, it's like I put clapboard wood up on all the windows and entries to myself. So there was no way grace could have ever gotten in and worked in my life. And maybe I wouldn't have taken 70 steps back. I would have just taken 2 or 3 steps back, right?
Yeah.
And stopped in place.
We all put up walls of protection. We protect ourselves when things get difficult, when we experience hardship, when we experience pain. We don't want to re-experience that because it hurts. And so we protect ourselves and we protect what we think we know about those things. We protect our emotions. We protect, we start preserving all of these things that we think will protect us or keep us, immunized from this life experience.
Right.
Yes. And, that armor becomes so heavy and so debilitating. And the more armor we wear, it's like we become like stones. We become insensitive to everything. You can't experience the bliss of joy if you're
when you're fully armored. Yeah, it's so true.
So, we just gently start to deconstruct the walls of protection that we've
Take
built.
those
We
things
take
away.
that armor
Empty the
off.
trash.
Empty the trash.
So that the soft muscle of
Every
your
day,
heart.
Every day you empty the trash. Every day.
Do you
Close your
hear
eyes.
this? Every day we have to empty the trash, which we start with the breath. The breath is the first way. That's opening up the trash can.
It's a quick
It's a quick
gateway.
way of doing it.
Yes.
It's the breath.
It is.
Okay, so how do you love and nourish your soul or yourself? Like, what are the things that you do that are uniquely take care of a D?
Well, I meditate.
Okay, got that.
That's the first and foremost. I meditate, I breathe. I love to be in nature.
Which Jackson Hole is
Yes, which
the ultimate.
I'm so fortunate to be in this place.
Where
and
it
to
is fully
reconnect.
snowing. I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
that on the camera, but it is fully snowing
is,
here.
it is.
And we're getting ready to have a big snowstorm of 18 to 20 inches.
Oh yeah,
Starting to,
Tomorrow's
yeah.
the day. Tomorrow's
the day. Yeah.
I really feel nourished and uplifted when I'm around like-minded people. So when I surround myself with really inspiring, positive people, people who aren't, going over all of the negative stuff in their lives, they're really in alignment with the positive aspects of their life and the direction they want to go from that place. That really uplifts me. That really nurtures me and nourishes me. And then, just simple things like when I'm really present with my son and I'm really giving myself to him and with my husband, that's, again, the busier life gets and the more to-dos we have, my tendency is, I get very goal-oriented, accomplishment-oriented, result-oriented.
Speaking my language.
Yeah, and I feel disconnected when I do that. So when I recognize that there will be time for those things, and I'm really present with the people that I love, that's very nourishing for me, very nurturing. And then I love, skiing and mountain biking and
Food.
oh yeah, food.
You love food. I mean, you're married to a chef, so come on.
Chef,
Yeah,
so, yes,
so it's
I
like
do
that's
love food. And my diet has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years, so it's been really exciting just kind of exploring new recipes. And
what does that mean? How has your diet changed?
well, I've eliminated meat from my diet, and I try to eat very pranic foods. So, I get rid of onion, garlic, caffeine.
So no coffee.
I know. Well, I'll do decaf.
Well,
sometimes.
this was a decaf tea. This is a chamomile tea. You're good.
I mean, I'm not like crazy strict about it, but that has been very nourishing for me. Really paying attention to what I'm consuming, what I'm putting in my body. I feel has been very supportive of me feeling more energized and me feeling more elevated and just healthy overall well-being.
Okay, so you know that I am, hope is kind of my word. It's the thing that I kind of hold on to and hope that I give to people. What would your definition of hope be?
Hope. Well, again, I think that we have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit. I think that we have a lot more possibility within us. And so I don't really hope for things that much. Rather,
Then maybe you're living in hope.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't given that much thought.
Because to me, like, you seem like one of the most hopeful people that I know.
Well, but I don't know that it's hopefulness. I think it's more, again, just gratitude. Like I have always trusted in the universe. I've never felt in my life that the universe hasn't given me what I've needed, even in the most challenging times of my life. So I don't
That's
I
hope.
don't, yeah.
I mean,
guess
just knowing that you completely trust.
it's more a trust. I would
Yeah.
say it's more
Okay,
a
I love that
trust
though.
than it is like a hope.
Okay, I love
Um,
trust.
Because hopefulness for me um, hopefulness almost takes me out of being responsible and my ability to respond to what's happening in life. But rather there's a trust that if I'm fully giving myself and if I'm
Your best self,
involved
yes.
and if I keep working on this one to be my best self, that things will happen as they should happen, as they need to happen. And
That's beautiful.
yeah,
Trust.
so yeah, I trust.
All right, Dee, thank you. I could talk to you for
Thank
3 hours. That was
you.
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.